Welcome to today's episode of the Public Works Podcast. We're in studio today. I hope you enjoy this format for today's episode. We're chatting with Sean Crumby, the city manager of the City of Irvine today. You'll hear from Sean about his great career path, some lessons learned along the way, and some advice for the younger generation or people coming up or want to make transitions or whatever the case might be to educate themselves in the public works workspace or in the public service space. Please like this episode, share it with a friend, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on LinkedIn as we take you through this really cool, important, informative episode. Thank you. Welcome back to the Public Works Podcast. This is the show where we talk with people who build, maintain, and lead the infrastructure and provide the services that keep our communities running. I'm your host for today's episode, Shane Silsby. My guest today has a career that a lot of people in our field will recognize. He came up through the technical ranks as a civil engineer and moved through the public works and utilities systems across Southern California and now sits at the top administrative seat for local governments, and that's in the city manager role for maybe the largest city in Orange County, California. That's our guest today, Sean Crumby, city manager with City of Irvine. Sean, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me on the podcast. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks. That's great. We're doing something a little bit different in the studio today, but hope you all like it at home. Before we dig in, just want to give our listeners a sense of who you are when you're not being the city manager. Anything else you want to talk about that you're interested in when you try to wind down? You like to travel, you like pets.
Happy to talk about me. Yeah, I've been married 22 years, live in Huntington Beach. My wife and I have 2 dogs. We spend a lot of times with the dogs. They have so much energy.
Okay.
When we're not doing that, we love to travel. We love to go visit cities across the world to get a different perspective on how people live and how they do things. Yeah, just any chance to get out is great.
That's awesome. Yeah. And on the beach, we know the dogs probably like that because all year round they can get out, run around, have some fun. Right.
We need to burn energy with them. It's a full-time job.
That's great. Well, thanks for sharing. Appreciate that. So on the professional side, just want to see if we can rewind back to the beginning of your journey. You earned your civil engineering degree from the University of Nevada, became a registered civil engineer. And what drew you into civil engineering in the first place? And did you have thoughts back then when you're going through like these design classes or technical classes that you'd end up being a leader in public service?
Yeah. So I always knew from a very young age that I wanted to be in a technical field. It was a fit for me. As I was going into college, my father actually recommended civil engineering for me. Huh. And as I was going into school, and I gave it a shot, and I took to it. I felt very connected to all the things that we do. I love the projects that we have, that the service that we provide. I think it's necessary everywhere. I think there's value to it, there's honor to it. I can't tell you how grateful I am and how much gratitude I have for the profession and all it's provided for me. And I hope that going forward I'm able to give back.
Yeah, it's when you're able to accomplish great things, it really feels good being in there, part of it. And sometimes you wonder how you'd ever do without it, right? Because you can kind of see how it's being done and made.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. So we're going to talk a little bit about your career here. Your early career was in leadership positions, including Long Beach and the deputy general manager of the water department and bureau manager, things like that. But I did try to put together a little graphic here, see if we got this right, and kind of your career path. I mentioned Long Beach, but you just want to walk us through this and see if I got it right. And I think it's really cool how you've covered a lot of different areas. You know about the coast, you know about development, you know about some inland areas, but maybe take us through your career here.
Happy to. Yeah, when you look at it like that, it looks like a lot of stops and a lot of places. Yeah. But the story is that I moved here in 1998 to Orange County. And initially I was working for consulting firms. I worked for a few consulting firms. I moved to Huntington Beach. And in 2000, I decided to go into the public sector. Okay. You can see 7 dots there, really 6 cities. And in a public sector career spanning almost 30 years, I've been super fortunate to have opportunities to move around to a variety of agencies. Started in Newport Beach, spent some time in Seal Beach, Stanton, Long Beach, Huntington Beach, and finally Irvine. It's been just a wonderful journey. I think, I started as a designer in the private sector, moved over into the public sector, where I felt like I had a lot more ownership into the projects that I was doing. After we were done, I got to live with those and really try to learn how to perfect and be better and maintain and own the things that I was doing and connect to the residents that we serve as public sector people. So it's been nothing but gratifying. Every stop along the way, I've learned a lot of different things, and picked up a lot of tricks and tips, and connected with a whole lot of people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I really like the city variety because you've got coastal cities, but they're a little bit different, right? You've got small, you've got maybe more advanced, Long Beach really on the cutting edge of that, a lot of downtown development. You've got some harbors to deal with. You've got Surf City, USA here in the middle, and then maybe some more interesting or challenging things to deal with in inland OC, and then Irvine, one of the best-known plant communities maybe in the country. So a lot of variety there, which must keep it interesting.
Yeah, for my career, I've really focused on trying to get diversity in terms of my experience, the jobs that I've taken, the things that I've liked to do, diversity in terms of the types of responsibilities within my job, the things that I've been provided the opportunity to do, but also diversity in terms of the residents that I've been able to serve. There's a vast range of diversity in terms of that, just within Long Beach, but even within the difference between some of the cities that I've served. I've been super fortunate to work on beach projects, which is a passion of mine, transportation, mobility projects, another passion, just a wide diversity amongst all the cities that I've been with.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. In Irvine, let me just see, sorry here. So we talked about Long Beach, and you were Deputy General Manager of Water Department and Bureau Manager of Energy Resources. Utilities and energies are specialties within Public Works, but as we talked about the different things and the variety of projects you got to work on, can you talk about that a little bit on the utility side, what that taught you and what you might use even today on that?
Yeah, coming up, I mentioned I was a designer and got to design a lot of different utility projects in addition to more of the traditional Public Works transportation stuff. My time in Long Beach, I was fortunate to be put in leadership roles for multiple utilities: water, sewer, storm drain, natural gas utility, oil facilities, and just really got to diversify my knowledge base in terms of how those function. But really also, what I really like about that is I got to be entrepreneurial, because they function essentially as separate business units, and they function financially independent of the city. And so you really have to try to focus on being viable financially and staying within your resources. It's not like you're going to raise taxes on a utility. It has to function independently on its own and be successful.
Cool. So running a business within the city, and you got the expenses and revenues, and you got to figure that out.
Right. Nobody wants their rates to go up.
That's
ever.
right. Well, that's cool. Then you were working at the City of Seal Beach, Public Works Director and Assistant City Manager, and then you shifted to Huntington Beach as Director of Public Works. That's a step up in responsibility for the coastal cities. But in addition to kind of changing roles, you also have some interesting things here. You talked about beach projects. Maybe you can explain for our listeners the whole sand thing that happens with beach communities and how that's a whole other project that probably many agencies don't ever have to deal with.
It's a whole science, and there's very, very passionate stakeholders involved in the beach. And maintaining, we no longer have the sediment transport that has historically been present within our coastline. And so we really have to spend effort managing our coastline from erosion, making sure that the sand that's there, we don't lose it. So Seal Beach, for example, Huntington Beach too, we spent considerable efforts managing beach erosion, making sure that our beach, there's a recreational aspect, but making sure that it's just safe in there, the homes are safe from erosion, that it's there sustainable for forever, for long term.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people, especially in the summers, they might come to Orange County beaches and they may not understand that you had to build those beaches up in order for them to erode, and it's kind of a continual
Right. There's
process.
a whole science, and if you didn't know, you wouldn't know exactly how much effort goes into that. If I could touch on another part of my experience, since you brought up that part of my journey, and I know we're going to talk about it later, but for people coming up, part of the story, my story, is the diversity I talked about. One of the aspects is big cities versus small cities. And I went to Seal Beach, and Stanton was even smaller. And I really, back to being entrepreneurial, had to take ownership of a smaller department and do every single role. Every person that works in a small public works department knows that you're a working director and you have to do everything. You don't get to delegate because there's nobody to delegate to. And so it really helps you to build a skill base that has just a lot of things to it. And when I went to Long Beach, I really felt that the time that I had in the small cities helped me, because I had performed literally every job in the department. I knew every function, and I knew how to do them. So it was easy to train, it was easy to build programs and make them successful for the city. I knew a lot of things that I didn't have to ask answers for, and I wouldn't replace that time. If I had the choice, I would not have replaced that time I spent in the small cities.
Yeah, that's great. And I've heard some of our other guests talk about that, just that you're in there doing every piece of the puzzle, and you have an appreciation for that because you also then kind of own more pieces of that puzzle.
Yeah, my experience in Stanton, I would get to the office at 6:30 every day. I would go to the yard, and we would meet and talk about field activities for the employees in the yard. And they would go out, and I always say they do the real work of Public Works, but they would go out and begin their day, whether it's graffiti cleanup or bulk debris or park maintenance or whatever they're doing, they would get to their work. And then I would go into the office, and I would be the engineer, and I would run engineering and do all that for my work day. The field guys are getting done at 3:30, so we do a check-in. But every day, running the whole department, getting to do everything, is just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's cool. And not only were you moving from a big city to small city and back and forth, but you also, especially at Seal Beach, you were shifting from engineer technical to leader, managing people instead of just projects. So do you want to talk about that transition a little bit?
Sure. I think all of us, we are productive when we're managing ourselves. And you get good at it, you gain skills, and that's ultimately why you have the chance to promote and get the chance to do more. But there's evolution there. Everybody has to learn how to manage others, how to be good at it. And I went through that. I've done mentorship and talked to a lot of people as they go through that. And I think it's natural that there's growing pains. I think for me, I try to provide an environment for my employees where the organization provides the ability to grow, to learn, provides tools for knowledge building through that, and then has a little bit of tolerance and patience to mistakes. I think organizations that expect perfection, growth happens slower. If you're not allowed to stub your toe and learn to walk a different path, you're walking slow. You're not moving fast and learning, progressing quickly and learning. And I think some organizations, they expect perfection and it stalls growth. And so I think my advice for people as they're going through that is embrace it. I think it's a fun journey. Learn from it. I think be empathetic to your employees. Understand the things that they have going on in their life and tailor your message to their situation.
Good points. And that's something you're not going to learn in your college curriculum, right, or early in the job.
No one tells you.
Right. I remember we would do some team projects or whatever. You're getting an engineering degree, but it was never like, okay, you're going to supervise these people and be having to rate their performance and set their salary and all of that. That's just not like taught in the profession. And then you just get into it, as you said. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. And everybody can improve. Everybody can. It's a journey. It's not a destination. And so for me, I'm still trying to continuously improve every day.
Yeah, good points. Okay, so I wanted to move then to projects. Let me just get us back here. So you come over to Irvine in 2023, and you were recruited over, you came from Huntington Beach to Irvine as the city's first ever director of project delivery and sustainability, which is a cool title. What was the vision behind that position, and what did that mean to you that you were trying to define it from scratch, maybe working with that city manager at the time?
So it was super exciting. I have nothing but wonderful things to say about my experience in Huntington Beach. But Irvine had gone through some leadership change. And through COVID, through that period, the city had stagnated a little bit in terms of project delivery. Some of the projects had been sitting. They'd done a great job in paving streets, but some of the other projects had been sitting for considerable time. And so they created a department specifically to deliver projects, project delivery and sustainability. And they asked me to come over, and I competed and was able to land that director job. At that time when I came over, our capital program had something north of $500 million in projects that had been carried over and had stagnated over years. In addition, the Great Park was really at a point where the master plan, our framework plan, and I can talk about that too, had just been adopted by the city council, and we had a $1.1 billion budget, and we were ready to start building. But the city didn't have a team in place to do that. So I felt super lucky that I was able to come in and build that team to deliver the Great Park and knock out some of the projects that had been on the books for a while. to deliver those to the public. I would say I came in 2023. In 2024, we delivered the largest paving program in the history of the city. Pretty exciting for that. We streamlined our on-call program and drastically increased it so that we could get help from the consulting world to deliver a multitude of projects. And then we got out the door just a series of projects that have been sitting, some of them 5 to 10 years, waiting for the initiative to push them forward. So it's been an exciting time. After about a year there, I was elevated to assistant city manager. That was an exciting time. And I was allowed to just focus on the Great Park during that period. And so the Great Park was pulled out of this group, and I was able to focus on project delivery. And I'm really excited that we have more projects in progress now than in the history of Irvine in terms of the Great Park. And I can talk through a few of those.
Yeah, get into that. So maybe we'll just sneak over here to the Great Park. You mentioned the portfolio size and all of that. I think it's interesting. People talk about or maybe criticize government, oh, you move too slow, whatever the case might be, but the planning process goes on for years, and it's meant to be somewhat inefficient because you're trying to get input. So it could certainly go faster without input, but you try to get input. And on something that's as community transformational as this, I'm sure there's a lot of input. Then you get a green light, and then you're able to run. So I think that's really important for people to also understand that that also just doesn't happen naturally because your teams are not built for that. You got to go from planning to execution. So we've got the Great Park up here. You want to talk about that a little bit? And
sure.
You told me
Happy
the map even has more things that we missed here or we should have included.
Well, maybe I could start with a little bit about what the Great Park is.
Yes, please.
So it's the old El Toro Marine Air Station base, and when the base had closure, the base is 4,700 acres. It's humongous. As part of the entitlement for the base, about 1,400 acres was pulled out of that 4,700 and deeded to the city, and the city is building what we are now calling the Great Park out of that 1,400 acres. Just for a frame of reference, 1,400 acres is about 1.5 times the size of Central Park in New York. I mean, it's big.
Okay.
Central Park's about 850 acres.
Okay.
So it is humongous. To undertake something that's that big, which, by the way, is bigger than area-wise, bigger than 2 cities in Orange County. It's bigger than Villa Park and Los Alamitos.
Okay.
It's like building a whole city. So something like that, yeah, you want to have a very robust planning process so that the residents of the city get the product that they want, so that we're building it in the right ways, and then we can build the team that can go about executing it. What you have here is a map, and this really focuses on the western sector, which is the sports park within the Great Park. And if everybody doesn't know, we were just the training grounds for the United States men's national team for the World Cup. So
nice.
Large victory for us, very exciting time. We're talking about a lot of different things for the western sector, but that's really only one component of a bigger project. The bigger project, we're building museums and talking about amphitheaters, 22 acres of lakes. We've got 90,000 square foot in retail that's going to open late this year. Just all kinds of projects being built throughout the park. We have an active budget or a current budget of 1.1, just over 1.1 billion right now. So it's a big budget with just a lot of moving parts.
Really interesting kind of arc there. And for Orange County, it's a semi-built out county. It's considered an urban county. So there aren't a lot of places to build new homes. And we have South County and like county areas unincorporated. It's more like suburban development. But this, you get planned development, but you get a little bit more density, and it's one of the areas in the city, in the county, that I think really allows for a population surge. I think Irvine's the second largest city now to Anaheim.
I think so, yeah.
But soon it will certainly overtake because of this expansion capability, right?
We have a housing element that's just been certified that will drastically increase our population at build-out. And so, yeah, it's very conceivable that we could be the largest city in Orange County.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And from a public works perspective, it's always just cool to see these projects getting built and development happening because that's infrastructure in the world. So that's cool.
We do tours for the Great Park. And if anybody wants to know, please go to our website and run a search in the search bar for the framework plan. The framework plan is our master plan. And we've got a storyboard there that lists all of the projects with all of the statuses and all of the details. Please go check it out. It's very exciting. We also do tours. So if anybody wants to go and see a tour, I think the last Thursday of the month we do a driving tour. And you really get, it's a huge impact when you're driving through undeveloped, 1,000 acres of undeveloped property, and you can just see what's coming. So yeah, I would encourage anybody that has interest to do that.
Yeah, that's really cool. So is there anything you want to mention about the capital improvement program, specific projects or initiatives as we move forward that you're proud of? You said the $1.1 billion. Are there some things that jump out to you that you mentioned the paving earlier, but anything linked to this part of it?
There's more than just a great park in terms of exciting capital projects in Irvine. And I mentioned some of them have been sitting, so I'm super exciting because as I've been in Irvine 3.5 years, now a few of those are getting to completion. One of them is we've got an animal care shelter in town, and we're towards the tail end of this year going to cut the ribbon and open a total redo of the animal care shelter, including a new welcome center, conference space, and we've built a whole medical clinic. That's actually the most exciting part for the animals. They have HVAC now. They have air conditioning. The dogs used to be in the heat before. So that's an exciting project. I think it was roughly $35 million construction value. The Jeffrey Open Space Trail. That is a regional trail that runs parallel to Jeffrey Avenue. And the amount of traffic on that trail is amazing. But one obstacle has been the freeway, the 5 freeway. And so we're building a 1,200-foot long pedestrian bridge over the 5 freeway. That project is set to cut the ribbon in August. I think August 11th, it's set to cut the ribbon. So super exciting to get that project. I think the amount of ped and bicycle traffic is going to be massive increase once the freeway's not in your way. Other projects, we're adding a 4th pool to the Willow Pool. So that just broke ground. That's going to be exciting new project. We're building a pretty large pedestrian bridge over Jamboree at Michelson. So that one is very exciting. It has a one-of-a-kind decorative aluminum cladding that's going on it. Very exciting. These 4 projects that I mentioned all have been on the books for 5, maybe pushing 10 years, and have been initiated in the past few years, and now are basically coming to completion. I am super proud. The employees and the people that work on it have been really working hard and really have done just a wonderful job to get these things going. So I couldn't be prouder.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it seems like it's part of the evolution. So you build base infrastructure for vehicles and housing and retail, and then people want to recreate and ride bikes and get around, and it's easier early on, but then once the volume increases, the traffic goes up. Now people are like, well, it's going to take me a while, I'm not sure about crossing that street, especially a freeway. And so you start building these connectors as the community gets more mature, it seems to fit right in.
As I've been in Irvine for 3.5 years now, the number one thing that I hear from residents is traffic concerns. They remember the days when Irvine had no traffic, and they want us to be better about moving cars. So, yeah, we want to be efficient with moving cars, but we want to enhance our residents' experience. And so things like pedestrian bridges have the dual benefit of hopefully people use it and they reduce their car trips, get exercise. It just has so many benefits, and super excited that these things are getting done.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have thoughts or perspectives about in small cities, you're scraping by or using duct tape or trying to get things done, and then you come to Irvine, which has a little more financial power just because of the size and the planned community nature of it? Any thoughts about that? Just completely different type of environments there.
It is. I spent 3 years in Stanton. I was their public works director, 5 years as the public works director in Seal. And yeah, just the amount of resources, it isn't as much in those smaller cities. In some of the bigger cities, I think there's some tolerance to starting projects and getting plans done and figuring things out and figuring out the money as we go. Right. But in smaller cities, you don't do that. You figure out the money first, and because you're not going to spend money on designs and all those things if you don't actually have a project to build to. And so there's a little bit difference in philosophy. I think it's a little more conservative in smaller cities. That doesn't mean you don't work hard. You work very hard there. I think you get the chance to maybe connect with people a little bit more in smaller cities in terms of your staff, in terms of residents. I left Seal Beach in 2015, and I think when I go there, I still run into people that I know. And still, I love it. People remember.
Yeah, and Seal Beach has a little over 25,000 people. Irvine is 380 to 400-ish. I can't remember the exact number. So Seal Beach would basically be a neighborhood in Irvine, so big scale difference there.
Yeah, essentially, Seal Beach is half the size of an individual council member's district in Long Beach or Irvine.
Okay.
So just put that in a little bit of perspective. And that goes across everything from the staff that you have to the resources that you have to everything. But the job doesn't get smaller. It's not like you have to do less. You still have to do all of the same things.
Yeah, for sure. And with bigger communities, though, the project costs are bigger, the risk can be bigger, so it's never easy at either place. It's really a different thought.
Yeah. The scrutiny is larger, too.
For sure, yeah. So as we come back, we looked at it geographically, but looking at it from a career progression standpoint now, starting as a civil engineer, 3 decades almost in municipal government, 17 of those in kind of a director level or executive role. And now you've reached kind of the pinnacle of local government administrative positions at the city manager role. There's got to be something fulfilling, at least when we look at it, right? When you watch a movie, you want to see the end of the story or whatever, but it's got to be interesting for you that you were able to do that full arc.
Yeah.
And sometimes as an engineer, you don't always know that you're going to be able to go that way. There's a lot of different categories of education or degrees or whatever that can end up as a city manager.
Yeah.
For a public works director, it's a handful of technical degrees, but city manager is basically all of them.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you to have completed that kind of entire journey? And I know you're not done yet, but culminating in this top administrative role.
Yeah. When I started out and I decided to go into the public sector and I went to Newport, my goal was to be city engineer. And I never knew I was even going to make it to director, assistant city manager, or city manager. But things evolve, opportunities happen, and things sort of fall into place. And I couldn't be more grateful that the city council entrusted me with the opportunity to be city manager. I think continuous improvement, I think being open to new experiences, maybe a little unconventional in terms of the types of responsibilities that I've had. I've always been very open to different jobs, I think have very much helped me. I think soft skills are very important. I think that we're actually having a moment right now, and I think the engineers that develop those soft skills, the empathy, the communication, all of those sorts of things really have opportunity right now. And what I think is that we're in a moment that there's a lot of politics in our country and a lot of things going on. And I think our council appreciates the fact that our staff is neutral, aware and knowledgeable of, but neutral to political issues and just focuses on getting work done is helpful. And I think the engineers are really good at that. If you look at the history of this county, after it was originally farming, right? And after that initial time, most of the city managers were the public works guys. They were the engineers because the county was trying to build up.
It was all about infrastructure.
It was all about infrastructure.
Yeah.
We evolved away from that, and so less of the public works guys made it all the way to essentially CEO, to being city manager. But I think we're having a moment where if people develop enough, there is opportunity. People are open to it. And I hope that me doing this, Huntington Beach's public works director made it, Travis Hopkins made it the city manager. Newport Beach's city manager, civil engineer, Simone Jurgis. I think that we're at a moment where there is opportunity and chance. And if you're open to it, up to it, and develop your skills, I think people can make it.
Good points. I always look at engineers as professional problem solvers.
Exactly.
Right? So it might be a project, yes, that's your main skill set, but if it's an initiative, it's the same principles, right? Scope, schedule, budget. How do we figure out what needs to be done? How do we solve the problem? And taking kind of an apolitical approach just to what do we need to do, take the next step, work through it.
I think if engineers, they have process, right? And you figure out the analytical process of all the things you mentioned. But if you're open to being creative, to thinking of different ways to problem solve, it's helpful. And from my experience, all of the bosses and the council members that I've gotten to work with have appreciated open-mindedness and creativity to problem solving.
Yeah. It's interesting also where we're at from a time standpoint of generations, and we have a new group that's going to have to come up much faster than maybe you or I did. And if they're able to communicate, being open to some coaching or listening or just speaking through things, they could fill in maybe a little bit more smoothly than just either they have to be there or they're not comfortable with that. So I think that's a good point too. Just you know, we're talking about engineers, but all the generation, but specifically the engineers usually heads down. So get them to be a little bit more heads up in what they're doing.
Yeah. If I could add to that,
Sure.
I think I mentioned openness earlier. and maybe a little bit of risk tolerance. But when I left Newport, nobody leaves Newport. I mean, it is a wonderful place to work. It is a great organization. And I left basically to take a promotion to deputy director. And so I essentially jumped like 3 levels all at once. It was the thing that springboarded my career. But I did it for even money. Newport was paid well, Seal Beach was not. And I took it for the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to get experience, the opportunity. And it springboarded me because I almost immediately landed public works director and took that. And I would encourage people to be open to opportunity. In the short term, that first trip to Seal Beach, it didn't help me financially, but it helped me experience-wise. I learned a lot. I got to that growth that you talked about in terms of becoming a manager. I got to do it in an environment that was helpful to me as I started that progression, and it springboarded me to the next thing. So I think being open to different things certainly is helpful to your career.
Yeah, good point. You build a bigger foundation, which allows you to then reach higher heights potentially.
Yeah.
So that's good. Anything else you wanted to add from city manager's role coming from the public works side and how you might see things differently from where you started? We talked about infrastructure, yes. We talked about problem solving, but anything else you want to add?
I think it's been very helpful to me coming into the city manager role. Yeah, I was super lucky in Seal Beach because my second time there I was assistant city manager, and I got to manage Parks and Rec, risk management, finance, HR, IT. I got to oversee wide variety. And so that really helped me later in my career when I got opportunities and I had exposure to those sorts of things. And I think if people want to follow that path, trying to soak up and absorb experience in those areas is certainly helpful for them to make that jump. I think the mindset that you talked about in terms of the analytical nature of engineers has been very helpful to me as I problem solve everything. I'm juggling balls all day long, juggling issues, topics, and being able to be analytical about something and then set it aside, get to something else, figure that out, and then go back to it and pick it up and start problem solving it again with employees or with stakeholders or whomever. It is a critical talent and something I actually enjoy, something I would push people to work on.
Yeah, a couple other things potentially, I'd like your opinion on it, but when you're in public works, you have to learn the financial side, I think earlier, because your projects cost money. So you kind of have to understand that. It might not be the base budget for your department, but you got to learn financing.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing is when that project goes into the world, you have to deal with community members, have those discussions, those hard conversations that you would eventually obviously have to have as a city manager.
Yeah.
And a lot of times elected officials are involved in that because it's in a district, so you get that exposure. And then just the fact of trying to get things done as a public works director. Yeah.
We talked about evolution in terms of managing, supervising, leading, but there's also an evolution in terms of your financial management. Because you start off and you have a project and you're managing the finances of that project. You evolve to managing a program, and maybe you have revenue streams, and maybe they're not big enough, so you're trying to figure out how to augment them with grants or nonprofit money or whatever it is, trying to augment your program so you can deliver more. You evolve to running a department and all the staffing costs and everything that goes into your permit fees and everything that goes into that. If you get to progress past that, multiple departments with multiple moving pieces and everything. And it, for sure, is an evolution. A fun one. Money is maybe one of the most important skills as a city manager, but it's critical and fun.
Yeah, a lot revolves around the budget, right? If you don't have the money to do something, it's hard to do something.
Can't do it.
Let me see if I can get this question to fit into that. So every city manager inherits a full plate. Irvine's growing, like we talked about. It's ambitious. A lot of cities right now are trying to navigate fiscal constraints against the community expectations when they're trying to maintain their infrastructure, their communities. So nobody wants to raise taxes, like you said earlier, but the expectations seem to continue to go up for cities and the services they're providing, but the costs are either staying the same or you're losing value because of inflation, whatever. You want to talk about that dichotomy a little bit, how you balance that?
Sure.
When every day you have less than what's needed.
Yeah, that's a everyday challenge with the job. And coming into Irvine, the joke that everybody told me is all they do is argue about mow heights on the mowers as they're cutting the grass. But there's some truth to high expectations in Irvine. People, they pay for it and they deserve it. And we need to deliver. It's a city that's hitting 50 years old, so the infrastructure is now getting to the point like many of the community centers and some of our infrastructure is getting to the point where it's at the end of its useful life, and we need to start reinvesting and figuring out those details. We're very fortunate, super fortunate. We've got an annual budget of $850 million a year. And so we do have resources, significant resources that can be invested into infrastructure. We've got a lot of ongoing costs, our salary and benefits. They're about 65% of our budget overall. Mm-hmm. So we really are left with 35% to figure out how to do things. I think trying to be intentional in terms of long-term planning. We've got facility master plans, pavement management plans, parks master plans. We're doing a library master plan right now and trying to fit the resources that we have into those plans so that we have a methodology to how we do things instead of just quickly responding to the biggest fire we have at the moment is critical. I think communicating those to our residents effectively is a high priority and something that's evolving and can be hard to do. I think if people don't know, they really push for the thing that's important to them, get it done right now. And we can't get everything done across the board immediately. It's just not financially possible to do all that. So effective planning, effective civic engagement, communication with our public. You could have buy-in from your employees. The employees have to believe the mission. They have to believe that there is a process to the madness. We have a very active employment group in Irvine. They're wonderful. They do a great job, and they have to lead, to be honest. It can't be from the city manager coming down. It has to be from the team as we manage and maintain. But you're absolutely right. Maintaining things costs money. And our budget process, we have a 2-year budget cycle in Irvine. Most cities have a 1-year budget cycle. And for everybody that doesn't know, that means that every year we're competing for resources as we put together that budget. And maintaining a building is never sexy. It never competes well against the myriad of other things that people want us to do. And so trying to figure out how to me, that's the best part about a master plan or a long-term plan, is selling the need so that it can compete well when we're fighting for resources.
Yeah, good point. I usually run into everybody loves to build a park and have the ribbon cutting, but then nobody really wants to pay to maintain it.
Yeah, yeah. No, you got to cut the grass.
Yeah, you got to cut the grass. So you've done a great job of giving some advice to maybe early career professionals or others in the workforce, but this is part of why I do the show here on the Public Works Podcast, is for workforce development and leadership development of the next generation people trying to advance in public works. What's an important piece of advice you give someone that's early in their career? We talked about things even throughout the career that are good to think about, but anything else you want to add about first job or the second job? What are your thoughts there?
We talked about being open to experience, and we talked about continuous improvement and skill building. I think a lot of people get set in their careers and maybe they're risk adverse. So, for example, and I won't say his name, but we had an employee bypass a significant promotional opportunity with another city, not wanting to leave Irvine because their finances aren't as strong as ours. And so that person came to me and asked my thoughts, and my advice was to take the job, do it well, and you can fix the finances, things can get better, or you can work 3 or 4 or 5 years and then use that to become city engineer in a city that has better finances. Ultimately, this person bypassed on the job and turned it down. And so I don't know that this person's going to get another city engineer opportunity. It's personal choice, but being risk tolerant to taking on those things is critical if you want to advance.
Well, I think your point is, too, there's a pyramid, right? So the higher you get, the fewer opportunities there are. So sometimes to advance, like in that case you brought up, you almost have to leave because in government especially, a lot of it's just about timing, right? People are not moving a lot. So when there is an opening, that's your chance. And I always tell people you could always come back, go get the experience, come back. But the higher you get, the less opportunities there are. And so if you say, I'm only going to look in this organization, you want to be loyal, but if I'm only going to look here, you're going to be limited in your opportunities.
Right. When I was in Newport, it's a great, wonderful organization and city. However, there's layers to the Public Works Department, and people openly tell me, if you're lucky by the time you're 50, you'll get to be city engineer because you got to wait your turn for this job and wait your turn for this job and wait your turn. And ultimately, I mentioned I left for opportunity for even money, essentially, to go to Seal. But part of the thoughts in the back of my mind were, I'm not going to wait till I'm 50 to get what I want. I'm going to go chase it now. And being open to that, I think, is critical.
Yeah, good points. And I know a lot of people get real nervous about that, and it's never easy. Change is never easy. Changing a job isn't easy. But if you're intending to do a good job and do the right thing, if you get into an agency, you can make it.
Do a great job and everything will work out.
Yeah. So you go to another agency or you stay in this agency, you try to do a great job, but public service doesn't always get the recognition it deserves. It can be hard to sell young talent or even people trying to make categorical or industry transitions into joining local government. What would you say to someone deciding whether to take a career in public service or private sector or another industry? What would you tell them about it, if it's worth it?
It's been tremendously rewarding for me. I think the motivations are a little bit different.
Sure.
Earlier in my career, I was a private sector person, and you really focused on shareholder profits, profitability for the company. And my public sector experience, especially the first half of it, where I was really involved in the execution of individual projects, you really focused on service. You really focused on a tangible product for our residents. And that's been very gratifying for me, whether we're improving a tree trimming operation or a street sweeping operation or we're paving a street better. There's a person that lives there and sees the direct benefit, and it's been very gratifying for me being involved in all of those sorts of things. The technical side, yes, you develop it, and yes, it's fun. However, unless you want to be doing that for your entire career, at some point, all these evolutions we've been talking about, whether they're management or financial or whatever, we should embrace them. And the public sector is a place where I think it can be very regimented, it can be very rules-oriented, but within those rules, I think there's opportunity to advance, and it's fun. They're great places to work. I wouldn't change anything about my career if I had to go back.
Well, that's good. My last one in this section was if you'd go back and give your 25-year-old Sean Crumby self-advice about what's going on or any guidance, but it sounds like you're pretty happy with that arc.
Well, I feel like the decisions I've made in my life, I don't know that they're all perfect, but they were done with the information that I had at the time.
Sure.
And the way I felt. And so I wouldn't change them. Were I to talk to myself 25 years ago, I think I would tell myself to enjoy the ride a little bit more, enjoy the journey. I think I have focused on what's next, where am I going, what's the next project, what's the next thing. And sometimes you do that at the expense of really living in the moment. I think as public works departments, we take on these projects and we get into them. And then the second they're done, they're cutting a ribbon over here and people are celebrating. And I'm focused on the next project and the next thing. And I think the opportunity to get that joy and celebrate in it, that's what I would tell the younger person is not to change, but revel in it a little bit, because those things are fun.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just thinking about, as you were using that anecdote, that at least in my experience, is it's easy to get personally invested into public service. Like, I see this, I see the problem, we can make a difference, and you're not maybe taking a vacation or having some extra fun because you're just absorbed in trying to get that thing through. Now, I was never in a job where I was selling pens or anything. Maybe I would have gotten emotionally attached to that. I don't think so, but when you're building a park, a road, you see what you did.
You get into construction on something like a park, and there's hundreds of the decisions that you're making as you're going. And then after it's done, you'll walk by and you'll see something and you'll remember that decision that happened and whoever was involved in it. And maybe, I could have done that better, or we could have saved a little money. And so I love being able to learn from that, trying to figure out how to do it better, how to do it faster, all of those sorts of things. Maybe we forgot to get the right person and we had to deal with it, or whatever it was, right? Yeah. Figuring out how to be better on it. Super fun.
Yeah, and your lessons learned are out there for everybody to see, sometimes forever.
Yeah,
so, That's great. Sean, this has been a great conversation. Before we go, do you want to mention anything else about where people can follow what you're doing or what's going on at the city?
Sure. That's great. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I couldn't be more grateful and thankful for the opportunities that have been presented to me. Anything about Irvine, we have a very robust website. Please feel free to go on there. Very robust social media. Please subscribe to our social media. Our communications and engagement department is amazing. So we're constantly putting out things there. Yeah, I just am really hopeful that the tail end of my career, I'm able to give back as much as I've received. I would say, and I haven't talked about this, the thing that I take the most pride in, that I feel the best about, is all the people that I've gotten to work with over the course of a career. And I have a lot of ex-employees, and maybe it's because I've jumped around a lot, that have had tremendous success. And I really take a lot of pride in that. It brings me a lot of joy when all the people that I've worked with succeed. We all succeed together. Yeah.
You do develop that camaraderie because you're in the trenches on these things. And
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But that's been Sean Crumby, the city manager from the City of Irvine. Thank you so much, Sean, for coming on
Thank you
the
for having
show.
me, Shane.
Yeah, we
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Great advice for the newer generation and just for people trying to advance in the public works arena. And so to everyone listening, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Public Works Podcast. I've been your host, Shane Silsby. Please like this episode, share it with a colleague, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's it. That was our episode with Sean Crumby, City Manager for the City of Irvine. Thank you to Sean for being on today's show and sharing his expertise. You can see there's a lot to learn over a career in public service, and I hope that our listeners will take advantage of some of that knowledge, make adjustments as you see fit in your own career, or tell somebody that you know about this episode where they might be able to learn more about what you can gain from a career in public service. For this episode of the Public Works Podcast, I've been your host, Shane Silsby. We will see you next time. Be sure to watch us on YouTube, check us out on LinkedIn, tell a friend, and keep supporting those in the public service industry that keep our communities running, provide services, and make our commute safe every day, keep our lights on, keep the water running. Thank a public service professional the next time you see one, and appreciate you tuning into this episode of the Public Works Podcast. Thank you.